I'm really glad that looking back, I set my goal of Flying Start and I just went for it. And then when I was on Flying Start, I set my goal of having a business. And even if people said, well, you need more experience before you start a business, just go for it.
Welcome back to the Amplify Horse Racing Podcast. I am Anise Pleasure, joined by Caitlin Christopherson. Happy fall. It is officially meteorological fall. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, it's great. Believe it or not, we've had one fall day here in the Southeast Texas area. So I'm feeling it a little bit. I'm a little excited. I have a sweater on today.
Fall as in like 75 as opposed to 100?
Well, fall is in like 80.
Oh my gosh. The tree just outside my window right there is turning red. Like bright red. So it's amazing how fast it came on. But it was an incredible summer. Now we're already getting into sales season. Breeders' Cup is fast approaching. And it was really fitting that with it being, yearling sales season, our guest today was Liza Hendriks of Inglis Digital USA, who Caitlin and I have both known separately for many years. And she just does such a great job of explaining like how she came to what she's doing, her interest in technology, and then how she combined that with horses. So I was really impressed. She has a great message out there for anybody who's interested in creating their own business and then learning with it along the way.
Yeah, she was absolutely fantastic with how she discussed her journey from a very young age to having this idea of not wanting to be in a 9-to-5 after spending a little bit of time in that, and how in a relatively short amount of time she's made it all happen. And we were working with Wanamakers earlier this year when Inglis acquired them, and it's been an amazing process to watch for both of us, I know.
And so cool to even talk about, you mentioned Wanamakers, how the company started and getting acquired by a larger company. So even to understand how that process can take place and how rewarding it is to see all your hard work pay off in even bigger ways. So I'm really pumped to introduce our audience to Liza.
Absolutely. Before we do, any big news going on for you, Anise?
Gosh, September is a slightly slower month for us in all the best ways, and that I get to kind of soak in and like reconnect to being involved in the industry. Being in Lexington, where we have the Keeneland September sale that's going on right now, and so friends and colleagues from all over are here, which is a great time for us to, share the message of Amplify. And we're just coming off of Saratoga, where we had several weeks of programming there. So decompressing a little bit, but also enjoying or, I guess savoring like the success of all of our summer programming, so to speak. How about for you? What's new in your world?
Well, by the time this podcast comes out, hopefully there will be a press release announced. But myself, I've recently acquired joint ownership of GSS back with Shona Rotundo. So we are back to being a fully owned female agency, and very, very excited about
Congratulations.
The future. So thank you.
How fitting for like the theme of this episode.
For the theme of the episode, exactly. So now we have 3 women who all own their own businesses and have grown them from various stages.
That is so cool. Well, huge congratulations. That would be something really cool to discuss more going forward. And let's meet Liza.
Fantastic.
Welcome to today's special guest, Liza Hendriks, the CEO of Inglis Digital USA, also founder of what was initially Wanamakers and now has recently become Inglis Digital USA, a online auction platform for thoroughbred sales. So we're going to dive into what that is, what that means, Liza's journey in getting to where she is now as a totally awesome CEO, and Liza has known Caitlin and I for a long time in different capacities, but we met originally through the Godolphin Flying Start program. So it'll be fun to hear her perspective on our year of the program. But welcome, Liza. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Good to see you guys.
Happy September sale, too. It feels kind of like I was mentioning to somebody yesterday, the Keeneland September sale is going on right now as we're recording this podcast. And it is the largest sale globally of thoroughbred yearlings. And for some reason, to me, it always kind of feels like back to school. Like all the horse racing are back from summer, all their summer places and coming back together, and everyone's kind of in one spot. So
that's a great analogy. Plus you have all the yearlings there who, you know, you look at some of those horses and you know they're going to be future stars. So it's kind of like entering school for them.
It's like they're starting kindergarten.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. Well, Liza, take us back to how you first became interested in horses, because both of your parents are trainers. Your dad is a steeplechase trainer. Your mom is a flat trainer. So you were really immersed with horses from a young age, but that doesn't always mean that kids who grew up in it want to always continue in it as a career. So what was your early life with horses like?
Yeah, for sure. I, like you mentioned, grew up around horses, but growing up, I did ride. I never really wanted to ride racehorses, whereas my older brother was racing ponies. And so he was really involved in racing from a young age. But I kind of took the backseat on that. I rode. I mean, I think I rode before I could walk. I have pictures on a pony when like I was tiny. But I started showing actually, and kind of stuck to the show ring. I didn't really like going fast. So wasn't really interested in racing from a young age, but was always surrounded by it. I remember, you know, when I was young, going to the track with my parents, and they'd you know, they'd always like drop me off outside the paddock while they'd go in and saddle, and then like be like, wait here. So it was always around it, but never really had kind of the bug from a young age to get into racing. And then when I went to college, I went to College of Charleston. And I studied business there. And actually for a while I had a computer science undergrad minor. And so I really liked startups. And I also did a course that was kind of like it was an incubator program for startups. And you had to create a business idea, pitch it. You had to form teams of 3, 1 business person, 1 marketing person, and 1 tech person. So I was the business person in that group, and actually pitched a business idea in that program, which was a parking app. So it's kind of like an Airbnb for parking spots. So like Charleston had a big parking spot problem downtown. So our idea was that people could, when they went to work, they could list their spot at their house to someone who's coming into the city. And also parking garages could list their parking spots as well to people, so they could like rent them out and book them. And then I actually went and interned for a startup in Atlanta. And it was just like an office job, like 9 to 5. And I was like, this is so boring. Like, get me out of the office. Like, I want to be able to kind of like be active as well. And like, I just didn't really see that from like just the tech side. And that was that was junior year, going into my senior year of college. And then my senior year, there was a steeplechase race in Charleston, and they were really struggling to get the college students out to the racetrack to you know, they wanted to boost sales, but they also wanted to get the college involved. And so I interned for them and was able to bring my friends out to the track and bring large groups and, talk to people about racing. And I was just like, wow, this is so much fun, kind of like merging my business skills with racing. And so probably around that time when I just kind of had that realization that I had such like a niche knowledge for this sport, and loved like getting people into racing and just kind of like working in the industry and seeing that I can merge business skills with industry knowledge, and it didn't have to be like hands-on going into the track like I had seen growing up with my parents being trainers. And so when I was interning for them, I kind of started researching the Flying Start program more, Godolphin Flying Start, and saw that I needed a year of experience in the industry. So kind of set that as my goal and then applied to industry jobs. So I applied to the New York Racing Association, and started in their TV department. So I interned for them straight out of college with the goal of long-term goal of doing Flying Start the year after. So I interned for them for a summer because they only had internship positions open. And then they, after that summer, created a role for me and kept me on full time. So I worked for them through the winter and then applied to Flying Start and got on it with you, Anise. So that was that next year. And I mean, yeah, you can talk about it too, but Flying Start was just such a great experience, and you meet so many people and throughout the world and just kind of gain a well-rounded knowledge of the industry, because I had grown up with trainers and had that side, and a little bit of the breeding because my mom breeds a few horses as well. But just like learning everything on the business side was so fascinating to me.
I would love to hear you both elaborate on Flying Start, the Godolphin Flying Start program, because I don't know that we've ever talked about it that much on the podcast. And it was something that I didn't even find out about until, my time had passed. I was in my late 20s and already pretty well into the industry. But it's very fascinating. If I had known, or I feel like if other people had known, it's something that you can set your sights on from a very early age, before you even go to college.
Yeah, I think it's something where I had exposure to it because my older brother, he did the Racetrack Industries program at Arizona, and he had always kind of thought about doing the program. But
also another great program.
Yeah, he was a steeplechase jockey at the time, so he never really wanted to take a season off of riding. Whereas I wasn't really tied down, and I think it sets you up so well for any type of job in the industry, just because you get so much experience. And you go, for people who don't know, it's a 2-year program, and you go to England, Ireland, Kentucky, Australia, Dubai, and then back to Ireland. So you travel to 5 different countries in 2 years and learn. You have hands-on experience, you have classroom experience, and you just learn from so many people and meet so many people as well. And now, Anise and I can go to any country where there's racing and we'll see familiar faces and can meet up with people and can meet other people that way as well. Yeah.
It was definitely an incredible program and a source of inspiration for me from the time that I was a kid. It was actually the first thoroughbred industry educational program that I ever learned about, and somebody had sent me an ad for it on Facebook probably shortly after it first started, because I was pretty young. I must have been 12. I had just gotten Facebook when somebody sent me like, hey, look, this really cool program. You should do this someday. And as a kid, I was like, yes, I think I will, which is kind of crazy. And so it's something that I had always had my sights set on. And the one thing that I'll say, the program accepts 12 young people each year. So Caitlin, even though you said that you had kind of, it was past your time by the time you learned about it, there are technically no age restrictions as long as you have your, generally your undergrad or some kind of post-secondary education paired with a certain length of time of working in the industry. And that varies depending on, if you have an associate's degree, you have to have a longer length of experience in the thoroughbred industry. If you have, a 4-year degree, you have to have, like Liza said, a full 1 year of experience in the industry. But they only accept 12 people each year. And I think that if I hadn't gotten in because I didn't see alternatives for like ways to travel in the industry, I would have been pretty upset about it. But I want young people to know that Godolphin Flying Start is not the only way to travel and see the world in the thoroughbred industry and to have your travel paid for along the way. And I was even surprised on mine and Liza's course that several of our fellow trainees had already traveled to Australia on their own, or traveled to the US on their own if they weren't from the US, or traveled and worked in these other places and been paid to do so. And that's something that I just wasn't able to conceptualize at the time. So Flying Start is amazing. You will experience so much, but it's not like it's the only way to travel and see the thoroughbred industry. Liza, I'm curious to know, like, going back a little bit before Flying Start, when you were going into college, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Like, before you went to University of Charleston, like, what did you think that your day job was going to be like?
That's a great question. I don't think I can really remember what I wanted to do. I don't think I knew at all. I went into college undecided. So, I think I declared a business major like when you had to, which was probably like 2 years in. I don't think I really knew. But I do remember that, like, once I started to take more business classes, then I kind of always had my sights set on a like startup or tech company. And then going into Flying Start also, like I remember a few months ago, I looked back at, like, we had to do, set our goals and what we wanted to do in the industry. And it was my first one was run a startup or tech company.
That is awesome.
I remember Clodagh, who runs the program, she was like, okay, but what do you want as your first job? And I was like, no, I want that as my first job.
That's so cool, because that was going to be my next question. Like, going into Flying Start, did you have any idea that tech jobs would be a thing in the thoroughbred industry, or you always just had this mindset of you were going to make your own job?
Yeah, I think I always had my mindset of I wanted to make my own job. I actually, for a while, I don't know if you remember, but for a while I wanted to start a racetrack in Charleston.
Oh, I remember.
So that was,
I hope you have that dream.
No, I haven't. And actually, I think South Carolina is about to legalize parimutuel wagering. So
that's fantastic.
For listeners who don't understand, parimutuel wagering is really closely tied to funding racing in general. So if you don't have parimutuel wagering legalized, it would be pretty hard to just start a racetrack. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Running for ribbons, you're really there's no money behind it. So wow, that would be really exciting.
That would be really exciting. All right, we're counting on that. I'm putting that in my long term. I'll make sure to check back in on that in the next 5 to 10, 20 years. Which, speaking of, talking about that far in the future, we did talk a little bit about how we've all known each other for quite a while now. I was actually just looking at a picture of us the other day, Liza, at Breeders' Cup 2017 at Del Mar. And you have still you are still involved in like a wide, breadth of areas in the industry. So can you talk a little bit about, obviously you did some interning for us, getting to see the marketing, the social perspective, and you still work as a reporter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I finished college and I went to NYRA, I kind of got experience behind the camera, and also started to do some interviews towards the end of my time there. And then, interned for you guys and got the experience with marketing and social media side. And so those were both before Flying Start. And then after Flying Start, I founded Wanamakers, but then did some things on the side as well because it was self-funded. So kind of had to work through that process and have some side gigs to support myself, since I wasn't paying myself a salary at the time. And so I actually did the social media and marketing for Starlight, which is a horse ownership partnership. And so worked for them part-time, and then also started part-time reporting and doing the paddock analysis and interviews for NYRA on their Fox Sports show. So I actually started with doing that because they were showing steeplechase races for the first time at Saratoga. And since my dad trains steeplechase horses and my brother rides steeplechase horses, I had the knowledge, and the people that were on the show didn't really specialize in steeplechase racing. So I was able to help them with that and kind of do the paddock analysis and then interview the people because I knew all of the connections, and a lot of them are different connections from flat racing. And then from that, I started to do reporting for flat races as well. But then, and we can talk about it more in depth, but after the Inglis merger, then I kind of stepped back from that a little bit, and I'll just do a steeplechase race here and there. So definitely a wide variety of different experience in the industry.
I want to go deeper into how Wanamakers started and now Inglis USA Digital. But can you elaborate more on how the steeplechase world is different from the flat world? Like, how might a steeplechase horse be different from a flat horse, based on age, prior experience, training? Like, how different is that industry from what people might know from just flat racing?
Yeah, so both of them are thoroughbreds, so it's the same breed, and a lot of people think at first that they're a different breed. But it's the same breed, and a lot of times it's a second career for a flat horse. And sometimes a steeplechase horse will be, they'll kind of start around the 3-year-old age. So that's about a year later than a flat horse. They run over jumps, which are typically hurdles, which kind of have like a soft base and then a brush over top, so they kind of brush through them. And they're longer races as well. So typically around 2 miles or around that is probably the average for a steeplechase race. But yeah, it's usually the turf horses that run long will move on to a steeplechase career, and that's how a lot of the steeplechase trainers acquire their horses. And most steeplechase trainers will just specialize in their horses running over jumps, but a lot of them have horses that run on the flat as well. So for example, my dad, Liza Hendriks, he has probably about half and half, and some of them will run flat, and then during the steeplechase season, then run over jumps. And then there's trainers like Carrie Bryan. She has a ton of flat horses now, but started out just having steeplechase horses. and then also the jockeys as well. So my younger brother, Parker, he's a steeplechase jockey, and they can be a little bit, the weight is a little bit higher. So they tend to be a little taller, and people look at them and they're like, "You're a jockey?" Because it doesn't look like your typical jockey, because the weights are a little bit higher, so they can be a little bit heavier, which helps because you have to be really strong to ride, that long of a race. And yeah, so they can be pretty similar to flat horses, and you just educate them to jump, which comes really naturally for a horse. And yeah, it's a fun atmosphere as well. It's kind of concentrated on the East Coast, I'm from Pennsylvania, but around the Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia area. And then they race at tracks like Saratoga and Colonial Downs, or where most of the races are on the flat tracks. But then also there'll be what we call jump meets, like out kind of like in a field, similar to what Kentucky Downs looks like. So it's just like out in a field, and there's just a little grandstand, and people come and tailgate and have a great time.
I have only been to one, and it was at the Kentucky Horse Park, and it was so neat and so different from a day of racing, but in a great way. It was a little bit more like being out there watching horses go over cross country or something, and you just kind of hang out and chat, and then watch. The races are so exciting, and hopefully we can get back to more of those.
Yeah, it's definitely fun, and there's a race around. We're in Kentucky now, but in Nashville there's a really fun race, and there's a fun race outside of New York City too. So that tends to draw people from the city, and sometimes they see the horses, sometimes they just party.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Amplify just wrapped up doing programming in Saratoga for the summer, and so we had groups of youth in the saddling paddock at different times. And so one of the days we were in the paddock for one of the steeplechase races, and it was so fun how quickly even these kids who didn't have a lot of experience picked out differences between the flat horses and the steeplechase horses, with some of the steeplechase horses being 5, 6, 7, even 9 years old. Wearing different tack and equipment. A lot of times they're, a slightly different build than you'd see a dirt horse with that. They'd have those long, stretchy bodies, like look very turf horse-esque. But yeah, so that was a great explanation. Thank you so much, Liza.
Yeah.
So jumping back to Wanamakers and Flying Start, you had to do a business plan basically as your capstone project for the Flying Start program, which ended up being Wanamakers. But what was the impetus for that? Where did the idea come from originally?
Yeah, so when we kind of started thinking about, I guess it was before we started thinking about our business plans too, we were in Australia at the beginning of our second year on the course. And in Australia, the thoroughbred industry sometimes can get a bit stagnant and slow to change and very traditional. And I've always found that Australia tends to be a little bit ahead of the curve in that sense, where they're very quick to adopt new technology and kind of make change. And the trainers are very progressive, and the owners as well. So we were down in Australia in, I guess it was 2018, the fall of 2018, or 19. Yeah, it would have been 19. Yeah. And the digital auctions there were just taking off. So Inglis is basically like the Keeneland of down there. It's the biggest auction house there, and they sell tons of horses. So they had started digital auctions, and they were really taking off. They were selling hundreds of horses every 2 weeks. And then there were a couple of smaller kind of startup type companies as well that were thriving also. so when we were down there, I just saw that those digital auctions kind of taking off, and we would do tours to Inglis and other auction houses as well. And just kind of noticed that in the US, we didn't have that on a national level. There were a couple smaller ones that were more of like listing sites. But I kind of saw the need for those auctions in the US. So I felt like it was something that I could bring back to the US because, I was always thinking of ideas and needs and problems to solve within the industry.
So kind of does.
So kind of started
this idea.
Yeah. So started with that as a need and something that I could bring to the US. And just started working on the idea and brainstorming and actually contacting web developers in the US. And then we started our business plans, which is our capstone at the end of Flying Start. And so I worked through the whole business plan. And also with my co-founder, Jack Carlino, who had done the Flying Start a few years before and did an online auction as his business plan as well. So we were kind of blending both of our ideas and founding it together. So it was great to work through the whole business plan on Flying Start because you had to do customer discovery, which it really pushed you to call people and kind of work through, what people's problems actually were rather than just trying to think of them on your own. So just worked through it during that. And then COVID hit, which was, it was tough for everyone, but it was kind of a silver lining and helped push online auctions forward. So we started the company in the end of May 2020, and we launched and had our first sale in June of 2020. So the company started as Wanamakers, and we had and still have monthly mixed sales. So everything from weanlings, yearlings, racehorses, broodmares every single month throughout the year, whereas traditionally auctions had been in-person sales at specific locations, like we were just talking about in the beginning of the podcast. Keeneland, September, it's yearlings at set times throughout the year, and then in November it's broodmares and racehorses at the end of that. So it had traditionally been specific types of horses at specific times of the year. And you could sell privately throughout the year, but not in kind of like a seamless way throughout the year. So we brought in the idea of having any type of horse throughout the entire year. So it really brings liquidity to the market because then owners are able to sell and reinvest that money into, say, a yearling at a physical sale. So it doesn't really replace any physical sale or traditional sale. Both of them kind of work together. But people who want to, use horse racing as a business and horse ownership as a business where they want to sell and capitalize on their horses throughout the year. Say if a horse runs really well first time out and it's worth probably the most it's ever going to be worth right after that run because the dream's alive. Mm-hmm. They can sell it at that time. Or if someone has a sibling to a horse in the Derby, they can sell right before then rather than waiting until November, and also spending that time and money each month because, there's training bills and bills for day rates and carrying costs as well. So that's the synopsis of digital auctions and kind of how I started with Wanamakers. And so that was 4 years ago now. And then Inglis reached out to me. Well, I had been down at the Inglis Easter sale, which is their biggest sale, and kind of had met some of the key people there. And then they actually just reached out to me and said, hey, we want to get into the American market for digital auctions. Is it, something that you would think about partnering or us buying your company? And at the time I owned it 100%. So I think it was really attractive for them because it was just me. So it would be a seamless, transition. And yeah, so they acquired the majority of Wanamakers this past winter. I kept a piece of the company, and then they kept me on as CEO to grow and expand it. And now we're hiring, and we have an office in Kentucky now that I'm in here. And we hired 2 people in April, one of them being another Flying Start grad, Kyle Wilson. So he's our head of sales and recruitment. So really trying to get the top horses onto the site and help it grow. And then Kelly as well, which I found through you guys at Amplify, had connected me with her. And she's been great as well, and helping with paperwork and kind of the admin side, because before that I had been doing everything myself. So it was a lot for 4 years, but kind of bootstrapped it and had the startup mentality, and now have Grand Slam helping as well with our social and marketing.
Yes, we're absolutely honored. It's been amazing to see this journey that Liza has been on. I love hearing about it all over again.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. Like, it's been so cool to see the growth from the very beginning, seeing Wanamakers go from just an idea to now being, Inglis Digital USA, and becoming like this big, amazing, impactful, force in the industry as digital sales rise in prominence. So that's so cool. And I'll also say Liza and I were the 2 people from our course who are currently fully employed by our Flying Start business plan. So that's pretty cool.
That's huge. That's incredible.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, well, I just wanted to talk about, because I feel like, obviously it's all of these amazing things that we've all made happen, right? To become part of these incredible businesses that we've grown and developed. Just want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the obstacles that you faced along the way, because I think it's important not to only just talk about them, but to understand that's all part of business, and that's all part of professional development, and the paths you take to move past those obstacles are kind of what define your future and success. Because I'm sure there were times, I mean, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure there were times you thought maybe, I don't know about this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to ask, right after you launched, what challenges you immediately faced? So along the same lines as Caitlin, I'm sure that it wasn't just like open arms. Welcome, Liza. We're going to give you horses.
Yeah. I think in our first sale we had, 5 horses, which is kind of what we were expecting. It was a really new concept in the industry. So it was just trying to get in front of people and put something out. And it probably wasn't as many horses as we wanted, but, we put out our first sale. I think we sold half of them. We had one promising 2-year-old in there, but it didn't end up selling. So that was kind of a letdown there. And, with small businesses and kind of any business, especially as I've seen with my parents as trainers too, there's such highs and there's such lows. So we did that as our first sale. And then as our second sale, my aunt, who's also a trainer and small breeder, she had a really exciting horse and put him in our second sale ever. His name was Faya, and he sold for $400,000 in our second sale ever. And I remember right at the end, her reserve was $400,000. So it wasn't going to sell under that. and the person who ended up buying bid with like 15 seconds left on the clock. And this was a new website. So I was like, is the website going to be okay? Like, is the timing okay? He's not bidding, where is he? And my aunt who sold the horse, she was so nervous that she went out of cell range and was mucking stalls. And I had to call my cousin and be like, can you please give the phone to Anne, my aunt, because she had just gone off on her own. But so someone ended up buying him for $400,000. So that was so exciting in our second sale. And from that, I was kind of expecting it to keep growing and growing and growing. But, our third sale was just okay. And for the 4 years while I was running Wanamakers, it was, we had some okay sales. We had bigger sales than others and smaller sales than others. And it was me. Jack had co-founded it with me and helped run it for the first year. And then it was me pretty much doing everything. So it was a lot of, doing the bookkeeping and the marketing. And so once I got through all of that, I never really had time to recruit horses or do outreach and kind of get in front of people. So it was definitely, we were plugging away until Wanamakers was acquired by Inglis, and then they were able to help fund it. And, now we have money to market and have people help and hire and grow. So, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it, because there were definitely times in the first few years where I thought, well, maybe this isn't really going anywhere. I have experience in other areas. But glad that I, just stuck with it.
What a journey. Like I'm hearing so many of the same things as, what I'm sure Caitlin experienced as GSS was growing. And I know what I experienced as Amplify was growing, and that you have these moments where you're like, this is all new to me. I'm learning this as I go along. Like, what the heck? Bookkeeping. All of a sudden, I'm reading books about accounting and like trying to learn about, workman's compensation as I hired my first person. And but as it was growing, did you ever have like one of these wow moments where you're like, wow, I'm so adult right now. Like, go me, I did that. Like, do any of those moments stand out to you where you just felt so accomplished and so proud of yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest moment that sticks out for that was when the Inglis transaction happened, because, and this is something that Inglis knows as well too, I pretty much copied their business model and their business and brought it to the US, and then they acquired it. So I was like, wow, I could not have thought of a better, exit strategy, and also better partners, because they're just, they've been phenomenal. And I spoke to a lot of mentors in and outside of racing, and a lot of people had told me, just be, careful who you partner with. And sometimes it doesn't work out, how you think it's going to. But, Inglis has just been great in bringing their experience on board, and they've been, running digital auctions for almost 9 years now. So have so much experience and knowledge that they can bring to our company to help it grow. So yeah, I think, the Inglis transaction was probably the biggest wow moment of, wow, I, modeled my business off of theirs, and now they're helping me grow it. And I, get all of their insights, whereas before I was just looking at their website.
That's so cool.
Great.
What's your favorite part of what you get to do now?
I think traveling, and kind of, I love the strategizing part of it, and, traveling to races and sales, and just, talking to people and spreading the word. And yeah, it's exciting.
What would be, I it's a low-hanging question to ask, like, what's your best piece of advice for another person in your shoes? But looking back at Liza, in 2020, or even we'll say 2018, when you were first starting Flying Start, if you had to give advice to yourself back then, what would it be based on everything that you've experienced to this point?
I think just to, set your goal and just to really go for it, and know that like what your goal is, you can accomplish, and you can reach out to people and people will always help. And, I'm really glad that looking back, I set my goal of Flying Start and I just went for it. And then when I was on Flying Start, I set my goal of having a business. And even if people said, well, you need more experience before you start a business, just go for it. And people will help you along the way. People always love to help. Most people always love to help. And just, if you don't know something, reach out to people and ask for advice. And most people love doing that. So just to really set your goal and then go for it, and create your support system along the way to help you reach those goals.
And what's ahead? How would you like to see Inglis Digital US expand or grow, or where do you want it to be in 5 years from now? Along with, where do you want Liza Hendriks to be in 5 years from now?
Yeah, no, I want to keep growing and expanding it. And I want it to create more of a global marketplace, and an easy way for owners and new owners to buy horses and, say, I want to buy a horse from England. I never thought I could, but I can buy a horse that's located in England and ship it over here, and vice versa, sell horses from here to Japan and the Middle East and, growing areas, and create a global marketplace.
It's fantastic, right? Because traditionally with these sales that happen, in one place, geographically speaking, it's really interesting how it's almost kind of like democratizing the sales system, because with competition horses, right, that's what drives the market, is that you can buy and sell at whatever time, or if you find an interesting prospect in Europe, it's very easy to bring it over and develop it. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more asterisks or parentheses on horse names.
Yeah, definitely.
It's such an amazing global industry, and cool how your own journey, your personal journey, personal and professional, has been very international and has informed your insights and your development of what you're doing now. But overall, like we were talking about it earlier, there are so many international buyers at the sales now. The Keeneland September sale, there are people from all over. We go to the races, and horses are always changing different countries as they change hands. And so like racing overall is becoming so much more international. So it'll be really cool to see how you guys, play a part in that picture going forward.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're excited for it. Yeah.
Any final things that anything that we didn't cover that you want to mention?
No, I don't think so. Thank you guys so much. And, it's so exciting to follow Amplify's journey as well, because like we were saying, it was your business plan also. So awesome to follow, and awesome to now be working with Grand Slam on the client side when I, was interning a few years ago.
That's so funny. Like, what a small world, eh? Especially in horse racing. Well, thank you so much, Liza, for joining us.
Liza.
Enjoy the rest of the racing season, the sales season. Good luck with everything with Inglis Digital, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Same. It was such a pleasure having you on.
Thank you guys so much.